Hey guys, welcome to The Takeaway. We are so excited that we get to kind of have this moment to kind of unpack this past week's sermon. And we have the pleasure of talking to Bryant, who gave this past week's sermon. And so, Bryant, you spent a lot of time talking about isolation in this sermon. And we're kind of beginning kind of this series where we're trying to detox. We're trying to get rid of and kind of unhinge some stuff that we kind of caught up in 2020. And so, question is, can we talk a little bit about what's the difference between isolation and solitude?
Yeah. I mean, you guys obviously have some great ideas to it too, but I think isolation, let's start with solitude. I think solitude is this intentional plan, right? To step away from something, to retreat from something so that we can grow and to experience, whether it's like for God, like solitude of God and retreating so that we can grow in those areas of our life where I feel like isolation is more like self-preservation. Right, like I just want to get away from everyone, avoid everything, and just kind of just in this own like just world on your own versus just any intentional plan for growth or to,
Yeah, I just to add to that, I think we were kind of talking before, like the idea of like in solitude, it's this intentional practice of kind of cutting off my horizontal relationship so I can open up this vertical relationship with God. But when we're in this kind of space where we're emotionally, mentally, spiritually isolated, we're not just cut off from people, we're also cut ourselves off from God, and we're like kind of Jonah in the bottom of the boat. He's like in the bottom of the boat, and not only is he at the bottom of the boat, he's asleep. That's how much he wants to get away. And I think a lot of us, we're like that sometimes.
I mean, let's psychoanalyze that place. We've all been there to some degree this last year. What's going on in our hearts and our minds in those isolated places where we're not only cut off from people or cut off from God? Like, what are we feeling? What are we sensing? Are we feeling? Like, what's going on in those places? What are we trying to escape from? What are we hoping to accomplish by that isolation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of it's like feeling becomes too much.
And
so we're inundated with feelings and emotion and stuff is hitting us. And so it's like the armadillo. Like you kind of curl up into that ball in that fetal position because it's harder to feel. And to be open to God is to be open to feel and experience and have to
and unpredictability and lack of control. And it's like this world feels so out of control. Let me just cocoon in and I know I can control this.
It's a little bit I have.
Definitely, like, you talked about the armadillo, you talked about cocoon, as an ostrich, just kind of sticking your head in the sand.
What is it with these creatures?
Great analogies.
Definitely for me, this past, to just be confessing, like the past month and a half, like just going through so much of like death in the family and all this stuff, like I'm the type of personality, I just want to get away from everything. And it's not even feeling anything, it's just emptiness. Just like being in a place where like, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to answer texts, emails, like none of that. Just like, there's no goal and plan. It's just, I just want to get away from thinking about all these things, get away from all these emotions and feelings, and essentially just sticking my head in the sand, just hoping everything is going to get better.
But of course, like, it doesn't. At a certain point, we have to take our head out of the sand. We have to come out of the cocoon. We have to, hopefully, what you said and what we're saying is like, allow God in and allow others in. How do we do that though? Like, what are the first steps? If you've been in isolation for a while, you haven't seen the light of the sun. It's going to blind you when you step back outside. Like, how do you even begin to sort of muster up? Because I think a lot of people are in this place right now where they're obviously we're not out of COVID yet, of course, but there seems to be like this upward movement, and there's a desire to start to come out. Like just the other day, it was 52 degrees, right? Bro, you felt what summer in New York City is going to be like. People are about to explode, but how do we begin to take those small steps out of isolation? What do you guys say?
I think I think the concept of isolation is like we're going to go out and do stuff, right? For me, it was taking time to process my feelings.
That's good.
Because I think in isolation, we're just ignoring everything.
Yeah.
And that's to say that isolation only began with the pandemic, which is not true.
Right.
We've had a lot of emotional isolation, spiritual isolation, and I think what the pandemic did was we were forced to sit with those feelings, and then we just kept choosing to ignore it.
We just kept opting out of it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So for me, like this past month was actually just being able to sit, not to fix things, not to like take care of things, but just to sit with my emotions, and that contained weeping, prayer, repenting, like it's a combination of stuff.
Yeah, I think there could be like two routes out of isolation. I think for some people, the route's going to be a radical openness to God that leads them then to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, though, that radical encounter of God, like it's almost like you don't feel ready for it, and so it's going to be your interactions with people, interactions with your church family, that's going to slowly kind of tease you out to like, oh God, we need to reconnect again. Because that's what we believe as believers. We all have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in us. So when people are encountering and meeting with us, they are meeting with the living God in some sense because His Spirit dwells within us.
Right.
Yeah. So I think for different people for different reasons, those may be two different routes. And it might be a bit of both. You might be like one day it's like a really good friend just knocks on the door and slips something under the door and say, I'm thinking about you. And that's going to open you up to, oh man, you know what, God is thinking about me.
Right.
Or it's the reverse. It's that I'm thinking, man, God, in all this you've been faithful. And then I'm reminded, but I have faithful friends who want to reach out and love me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I think also just from a practical standpoint, I remember Anna and I, my wife, you guys know Anna. Some of you may not know Anna, but my wife, we dated long distance, pretty much our entire relationship. And we always remarked, and the first time this happened, it's kind of scared us, but then we realized this always happened. When we had a period of distance, right, where she was on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast, our relationship was all FaceTime, right? And then we'd be able to reconnect and see each other. At the airport, whether she was flying over to me or I was flying to her, the first 5 minutes of reconnecting was super awkward. Like, super awkward. Even though we were in love with each other, like, it was awkward because we were translating. We had a relationship with a phone for the last couple months, and now this person on the phone has a body.
Yeah.
And so it was a shift of the relationship. It took a little bit for our souls to catch up with what was happening.
Yeah.
So remember, oh, no. You're an embodied person. So I think just on a practical level, the encouragement for all of us, for people, you're not going to come out of isolation gracefully. You know, like, we're going to stumble like, you know, a chick being born from an egg, right? Like, it's not going to be gracefully, and to give people and yourself grace to relearn what it is to have a conversation and to relearn what it is to, you know, to feel feelings when you've never done that, all of that stuff. Yeah. So, yeah.
And that's going to be like the place of like rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, 'cause
exactly.
Rhythms force my body to do with maybe my interior life isn't ready for.
Which we're getting to that in April and May. Plug right there.
That's how we planned it all out.
Yeah, I think, and I just thought of this right now, I think one of the things that's going to be tough is coming out of this isolation is to be authentic and real.
Yeah.
Because I think so much of what we see is so curated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Zooms, like, and I love those background Zooms where it's like a nice fancy mansion,
right?
But it's like a pile of dishes in the back in reality. I think we've done such a good job during this digital age of curating everything to make it seem perfect.
Right.
But then coming out and to be authentic and to be real, I think that's gonna be a challenge for me.
I mean, we've liked our recorded sermons where we didn't say it right. We're like, you know, just let's stop right there. Let's rework that line, you know?
Yeah, so having everything run live.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. We got like a final question or something, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, as a joke, I guess, coming out of isolation is getting out of my pajamas, you know, like having the formal top attire and then like shorts and pajama pants at the bottom.
Oh man, it's the best feeling.
I'm gonna be honest, that's been the dream for me.
Or lying about what the reason you're turning off your camera. Like, guys, I gotta run get a package. It's like,
Right.
That'll watch out.
I guess on that note, no, nothing practical anything for our takeaway this
That's the practical.
Yeah.
Stop lying about your Zoom.
Yep.
That's the first step.
Be real.
Oh man.
Well, guys, that's the takeaway. We're so glad you guys joined in, and let's continue to do this. Continue to tune in after Sunday to kind of dig deeper into the message. We love you guys. See you soon, Oak Brooklyn.